Okay, we have Les Schrenk with us today. Les was born on a farm in Long Prairie, Minnesota, on November 16, 1923. A little bit
Further away.
echoey.
There you go.
Just pull your mic back, Steve.
Overdriving it.
Is that better?
There you go.
Okay. Anyway, born November 16, 1923. He was one of 3 children, grew up on a farm. Les enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Corps in November 1942. After completing basic training, he was trained as a ball turret gunner on a B-17 Flying Fortress 4-engine heavy bomber. By early 1944, Les was flying missions from England with the 327th Bomb Squadron, the 92nd Bomb Group, part of the 8th Air Force. In February 22, 1944, during a mission to Germany, Les's B-17 was shot down over German-occupied Denmark, and Les was captured. After interrogation at the Central Dulag Luft facility, Les spent time in Stalag Luft 6,
Heidegger,
thank you, and Stalag Luft 4, Gross.
Großdetail.
Okay, Les, I'm going to turn the ball to you.
Well,
No pun intended there, it was a ball turret.
the first place I started flying late 1943.
Keep going.
If not, I just corrected you, that's all.
For what it's worth, I was 6 months old. Let's see, he was over the North Sea, headed to England.
No, I got hit,
Yeah.
that's right.
And after a mission to Denmark, he was being attacked by a formation of German Me-109s and Ju-88 fighters.
That's correct.
And then what happened? You got hit.
Well, first the plane just to our left of us got hit, and we saw it crash into the sea. Of course, there were no survivors. Then our turn was next, and our right number 4 fuel tank was on fire. We were trailing fire and smoke at least 30, 40 feet behind the plane, and we had 20 minutes to get before we could get to landfall. And just as well, there were explosion after explosion after explosion. They were so violent that they would actually blow out the fire, and then it would relight at another eruption. And I have no idea how that wing held out as long as it did. It was actually bending upward slightly from the hot fire, but we did make landfall and parachuted out.
Your tail gunner was Mr. Swindler,
Yes,
and your radio operator was Walcott. The left waist gun was Harmon. Costello was your right waist gun, and you were the ball turret, and you bailed out the rear door?
the rear door.
The rear door, okay. You started toward the rear door, you pulled the latch, which jettisoned the door, and then what happened?
The man in front of me, Costello, froze in the doorway, was afraid to jump, and I gave him a great big boot in the rear. He went flying out. I jumped next, waited for a few seconds, pulled the ripcord, but the parachute did not open. It wasn't any big deal. I grabbed inside the parachute and pulled the drogue chute out, and it opened with a hell of a snap. They had deliberately made the airmen's parachutes very small because the German pilots had the habit of shooting men in their parachute. And by making the chute smaller, of course, you were in the air less time, but when you hit the ground, I looked it up later after I got home, and it was the equivalent of hitting a wall at 13 miles an hour. Even in training, they told us it was the equivalent of jumping off the second-story building.
I would never do that.
Yes, you would.
Even before landing, you could see troops in the distance.
Yes, in fact, they were even shooting at us, and this Ju-88 was circling and kind of making shallow dives above us, and I didn't know if he was trying to spill our chutes or what. I found out later that he was the same plane that shot us down, and he was just observing us to make sure that we wouldn't be escaping to Sweden, where we could have spent the rest of the war.
What'd you do with your parachute?
What would you do with the parachute?
Did you stuff it in the ground?
Yes. I wanted to make sure the Germans couldn't use it, so I stamped it into the mud.
And according to what you wrote before, about this time, it was about 14:30 in the afternoon.
I believe that's right.
Okay, then you were, let's see, you were a small car nearby, and let's see, a small car came by, and
Forced me to get in.
there was a big sort of a gas bag attached to the rear of the car, and a German was putting what looked like wood chips in a compartment below the gas bag. Then he sprinkled the white powder over the chips. You remember that?
That's correct. Germany was so short of gasoline that they were using wood chips as fuel.
And this car had a manufacturer symbol.
It said Ford.
Ford motor, yeah. Okay, they took you inside, and there were several of your crew members in there. This is at Stalag.
You know, this is at Keystad, Aalborg,
Okay,
because we haven't gotten to the prison camp yet.
okay. So this was like the interrogation?
No, the interrogation came a couple days later.
Okay, as they brought in a crew member, they would take down each person's name and rank and serial number. You didn't recall that they asked any military questions.
No, the interrogation was later on to do
Later on. And then there was something in the interrogation, they knew lots of information about you.
Yes. You want to go to the interrogation?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the first place, we hadn't had anything to eat and very little to drink since the last meal at our base camp in England. And of course, we were starved to the devil. And there was about 500 people in this room waiting for who know what, but we could tell it involved a lot of torture because in the background you could hear all kinds of noises, screaming, begging for mercy, even occasional gunshot. And you were sitting there for maybe a couple hours listening to all these horrible sounds. They take one prisoner out at a time, and you'd never see him again. It was a one-way trip. So when it came to my turn, this German that if Hollywood would have picked him for a character, they couldn't have done a better job.
Central casting, yeah.
First place, he was missing most of his right arm. Then the second thing, He had a great big deep scar right across his face where even his left eye was completely missing. He was kind of a short, stubby guy. He didn't say a word, but he had what we call a burp gun, which is a submachine gun. He would prod you whichever way he wanted you to go. And he took me into this room where this German officer was in, and the German officer acted like he was my best friend. Oh, Schrenk, yeah, we've been expecting you. Then he went back to a file, rummaged around, he came back with a file. He had papers that he was looking through. Oh yeah, we know all about you. Your mother and your father named their names, my brothers and sisters. You were brought up on a dairy farm. Yeah, we know all about you. And then he said, you must want your parents to know that you're well and safe. And I said, well, certainly. Well, here's a Red Cross form. You fill it out. So I put down my name, rank, and serial number, my mother and father's name, and their address, because they already had that, so I wasn't giving them any information. And then all the rest of the questions were all military. What was your intended target? What other targets had you been briefed at? And just all of military. So naturally I gave it back to him, and oh, he just flew into a rage. And he slapped me across the face. Don't you think we know that you were flying in a B-17? Write it down. And of course I gave my name, rank, and serial number, and he kept on beating me. This time he wasn't beating me with the gun barrel. It was just very, very hard knocks to my head. And I kept on giving my name, rank, and serial number. And he kept on getting more and more and more irritated. And it seemed like it lasted for an eternity. And finally, he put the butt of his head, his pistol right against my head and said, "You better answer the next question or else." Of course, I thought about the gunshots. I composed myself, gave him my name, rank, and serial number again. He kicked me in the rear, and slapped me in the face, and I come flying out, and I knew interrogation was over, and I breathed a sigh of relief, believe me.
Now, that's interesting about how much information they knew about him. In segment 7 of Masters of the Air, they talk about this. They showed that they knew this much. And it's amazing to me, this is 1944. They didn't have the computers that we have now and the information systems, but the amount of information that they actually had on these flyers, to me, is quite amazing.
Well, they told one of the guys, what's the matter? The clock in your mess hall was 5 minutes late this morning. And it was. I mean, they knew the information.
Wow, that's...
that had happened just a couple hours earlier.
So they took your wallet? And...
They took my wallet, and I had both American money and English money. And took the money and gave me the wallet back. And I looked at him and I said, "I want a receipt for that." Oh, he just flew into a rage. What do you want a receipt for? And I said, "Because America is going to win the war, and I'm going to collect it at the war's end." Ooh, that just infuriated him.
So after about 6 months at Stalag Luft 6, you were then at I can't pronounce it. Hydrokrug?
Yeah. Well, first we went on the coal ship.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead.
We were, like he said, we were at Stalag Luft 6, and for about 6 months. It's summertime now, but you could hear the Russians advancing. We had to put shutters on our windows at night, but Even through the cracks, you could see the flashes of light as the Russians were advancing. And we were quite elated that sooner or later we'd be liberated, but the Germans, of course, had a different idea. They marched us to a couple railroad cars, started loading us. When the boxcar was full, they would take their bayonets and jab the guys in the doorway. And of course, the guys would step back. A couple more would go in. It just kept on. Where at last there was standing room only. You couldn't possibly get any more people in. Then they slammed the door shut. This is the middle of summer, and we're in there. The body heat just stored, and of course we had no food, no water. And we sat at that siding for the rest of the day. Then they moved the boxcars to Memel, Lithuania, and had us get on a couple, I'm going to call them coal ships, because that's what they had been used for. The reason I know that, there was about 2 or 3 inches of coal dust on the floor. There was just a little makeshift ladder going down into the hold, and they were cursing and kicking people's hands as you tried to go down the whole works. When we get down into the hold, it was so crowded again, you couldn't possibly sit down. We were in that hold for, I think, 3.5 or 4 days, and no food, no water. We all had dysentery so bad from the poor diet that you had to relieve yourself right where you stood. Most of the time you couldn't even remove your clothes in time. And the stench just was unbearable. And we were in that hold, that ship for, like I said, I think it was 3.5 days. Then we got to the seaport of, I can't remember what it is now. Anyway, it's in Poland. And they put us on a boxcar, and now they shackled us. Oh, they made us put our overcoats on, even though it was summertime, and shackled us in twos. And that trip only lasted overnight. We were being guarded by real young-looking Germans. I could speak German, and I asked a couple of them how old they were. They were all 13 and 14 years old. And that night I slept with the gun barrel about that far from my head all night, which I was used to it, so it didn't bother me that much. When we got to the station, they loaded us out of the boxcar, and I can still remember this German officer coming up and giving a speech. Today is your lucky day. Today you're going to get not 1 Red Cross parcel, but 2. And my guard ship, out of 6, we were starved to the point where I'm sure I lost about half my body weight at that time. The most you ever got was 1 meal a day, if you got that much. And if anything went wrong, like an Allied vicar or anything like that, you wouldn't get anything to eat for maybe days at a time. But anyway, I couldn't believe my ears. Certainly, they handed out 2 Red Cross parcels. So here we are, with 1 parcel under each arm, shackled. Then I heard the officer give the order to fix bayonets. Then they loosened a bunch of vicious police dogs and had us run for 5 kilometers down the road, hoping that we would drop our Red Cross parcels. And of course, just about everybody did. I was so desperate, I think I was about the only one that actually managed to hang on to the parcel. All during that run, the dogs were snapping at our heels, and one guy actually had 60 bayonet wounds in his body. Anyway, we got to this camp. This is Stalag Luft 4 now, and they had us lay down on kind of a grassy knoll, and the German guards, they started taunting us. They knew how desperate we were for water and everything. There were some pumps there. They'd pump water, throw at us, and laugh and everything. And all of a sudden, one of the prisoners, us prisoners, started singing "God Bless America," and we all joined in. And oh, that just infuriated the Germans to know that we were so miserable and that we had the gall to taunt them right back. Then it came time for the strip search. They took us one at a time, and you had to strip naked, and they went through all your belongings, making sure that you didn't have some kind of escape kit or anything like that. And this guard that was going to search me, he was the one that I recognized from Stalag Luft 6. He was a great big, I think he was better than 6 feet tall. It seems to be he was about 5'6" or 6.
Well, I think you wrote 6'7".
Okay. Anyway, we had called him Ham Hand.
Yeah, Ham Hand, that was Ham Hand.
Ham Hand, because his hands were just unusually large. He was brutal to the point, when you weren't watching, he would take his rifle butt and stamp on your arch of your foot, trying to break your arches. Either that or he'd come up behind you and he'd cup his hand and slap your ear, trying to break your eardrums. And this is the guy that was going to search me. And he grabbed both my Red Cross parcels, and like I said, I could speak German. I told him, those are Red Cross parcels and they're mine. He took out his pistol and he hit me across the head, where I actually fell on the floor, got up, and told him again that they were Red Cross parcels and they were mine. He hit me 5 different times. I mean, I kept on repeating that 5 different times. My head was just a bloody mess. He had hit me across the chin, on top of the head, and that was just a mass of blood. I finally came to the realization that if I wouldn't give him the parcels, he would kill me. So I finally let him have the parcels. The minute he was out of my sight, putting the parcels away, I hadn't been strip searched yet. I still had all my clothes on. So I ran out of the door to the guys that had already been strip searched, covered my head with my overcoat, pretending I was asleep. He came out looking for me, cursing in German, walking back and forth right in front of me, but not realizing I was there. And he finally got disgusted and went back in. That night, after 4.5 days, we got the equivalent of 2 little tiny carrots. This is in July now, so they didn't have a very long growing season yet. They were about the size of my little finger, and I was so hungry I ate the leaves, carrot, dirt, and all.
You had beets too, I think. You had sugar beets or beets?
Sugar beets was during the Death March.
Okay.
If you were lucky enough to find a sugar beet that had fallen off the load, of course it was frozen and everything, and you knew you'd get sick from eating it, but you were so starved you ate anything. But we're getting ahead of the story.
That's all right, you're doing fine. There was a lot of dysentery.
You want to take over? Or?
I don't want to steal your show.
Well,
you know, I read this whole thing. It is so fascinating. Keep going, Les.
I'm trying to remember where the heck I was at.
Well, we're talking about the diet and the dysentery.
Sugar beets.
Well,
because no matter what you ate, it bothered your stomach, and everybody's stomach.
Well, they deliberately did it. One thing they did, it came in a can a little bit bigger than this. It didn't have any label or anything on it. This is summertime now. And we'd think it was the residue from cod liver after the oil had been extracted. It was a gray, yucky looking blob of nothing. But to make it worse, they had taken their bayonets and run their bayonets through the can and left it set out in the sun until it oozed and bubbled. And you had two choices: either to get sick or starve. So that's the reason we had such bad dysentery. We wore the same clothing for the full 15 months that we were in POW camp. You never had a chance to take it off, to clean it or anything. You hardly ever had enough water to even drink, let alone wash clothes in. You had pooped in your pants maybe a couple hundred dozen times, and we were covered with fleas, lice, and bed bugs, and just getting weaker by the day.
So sooner or later, summer went away and it got cold.
Yeah. Now we're in the second camp, and again the Russians are closing in. You could again hear the cannons roar, and this is February the 6th. They gave us our notice that we were going to be going, they said, on a 2-day march. I was on that march for 86 days. The only winter clothing we had was an overcoat and one thin blanket. And they started that march. It was in the middle of a snowstorm, and my shoes, they were actually English Army shoes, and by that time they were so worn out that I could see my toes without taking the shoes off. And the minute we started out, of course, we had wet feet. We didn't see the inside of a heated building for the full 86 days that we were on the march. If you couldn't keep up of the march, you got shot. And you've never seen such heroism in your life. Some of these poor guys that had hardly walk at all, when their buddy couldn't walk anymore, they would try to help their buddy just so they wouldn't get shot. They knew fully well that they would never get credit for what they were doing, never a ribbon or anything like that. To me, they are the true heroes.
Let's talk about your promotion.
Well, believe it or not, when we got liberated, we were liberated by the English. It was just a small contingent of English that had liberated us.
And that was in May, right?
That was in May.
45.
Yeah, May 3rd. Most people don't realize this, but the English were so rationed that even their army only had 2 meals a day. And here we are, there's more of us than what there are of them, and hungry as can be. And they kept on telling us, well, we've told the Americans that you're liberated, they should be coming to pick you up any day now. So we were with the English for, it must have been almost a week, and Americans didn't come and get us. So finally they got, they couldn't do anything because they couldn't keep on feeding us. They had given us their uniforms, so we all got English uniforms on now. And
English
They,
food.
they couldn't come and get you.
they couldn't come. So finally, in desperation, they called in the Royal Air Force, and literally dumped us at the nearest U.S. base. We get to that U.S. base, they said, well, we haven't got any provision for you. We don't know where you're going to sleep tonight. You'll just have to find someplace on your own. So, Buddy and I, this is in Brussels. We found a bombed-out building, and we spent the night there. Of course, it was still made, colder than heck. Then they took us to Camp Lucky Strike, and there again.
That was in France, right?
That was in France. There again, we don't know what we're going to do with you. We haven't got any uniforms for you. You'll just have to keep on wearing your English uniforms. Yeah, we looked around. They had all kinds of German POWs working there. They all had American uniforms. Here we are with English uniforms. They had us confined to a tent. There was 4 bunks in each tent, confined to a tent with absolutely no entertainment or anything. They were so short of kitchen staff, they could call you any time of the day or night, like 2:30 in the morning, they could say, it was your turn to eat. So you'd have to get up and dress. And of course, being that our stomach was so shrunk, you eat just a little bit and your stomach was full, and a half hour later you're hungry. And we were just absolutely in misery there. And one day, an American airplane landed there, and I said to the guys, I said, I've had it. I'm going to see if I can't get out of here, knowing fully well I was going AOL if I did. And here I am in my English uniform, and I walk up to this American pilot, and I said, pardon me, sir, you don't happen to be going back to England, do you? And he said, well, yes, as a matter of fact, I am. And I said, do you think I could possibly thumb a ride back to England with you? He looks at me and he thinks I'm English because I'm in an English uniform. And he said, well, yes, are all your papers in order? I said, oh, yes, sir, they certainly are. Of course, I didn't have a paper to my name. Got back to England, thumbed a ride to my old air base, and oh, my heart just sunk. Here it was closed. Well, I looked in the distance, and here finally I saw one guy way down on the other side of the compound. I walked over to him, and believe it or not, I knew the guy. And he looked at me, he said, don't I know you? And I said, yes, sir, you do. He was an officer. I said, yes, sir, you do. You and I used to ride the same bus to Northampton back in my flying days. He looked at me and he said, what the hell are you doing in that uniform? And of course I explained it to him. He said, good Lord, he says, if they catch you in that uniform, they can accuse you of desertion. He said, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but he said, can you come back tomorrow and I'll see what I can do for you. So I thanked him for it, and went uptown and went to the Red Cross and got settled there. Went back to him the next day, and he had a uniform for me. He said, I even did better than that. He said, I got a partial payment from your back pay. He said, it's $100. He said, don't worry, it'll catch up with you. It's not a gift or anything like that, but he said, that should at least do you for a couple of days. So then he said, you don't realize how lucky you are. I'm the last man at this base. I was sent here to close the base, and if you would have come one day later, I wouldn't have been here. So I was really, really lucky. Like I said, I went to the Red Cross, and when some of the other guys found out what I had done, there must have been a good 100, maybe even 200 guys. I don't know how they got to England, but I wish I would have asked them, because they got to England like I did. And we were having a merry old time. And finally, we come to the realization, well, we're going to have to get back home somehow. We're going to have to turn ourselves into the authorities, and they're going to throw the book at us. So what should we do? Well, we all decided, if we go there individually, they'll throw the book at us. If we go there en masse, they'll have one hell of a time explaining how come they didn't take care of us. So that's exactly what we did. We went there, ooh, they were, gave us holy hell. We're sending you to Southampton, and you're confined to the barracks. We went to Southampton, we put one guy on alert, and the rest of us went downtown and had a high old time. One day, LST came to pick us up, and I spent that. LST is the smallest ship that will cross the Atlantic, and I was on that ship for 17 days and had the time of my life. We had a great big storm, and everybody got seasick except me. So I had a high old time. Sailors treated us like kings and showed us all over the ship and everything like that. But that LST had just come, it had just come from the States, just barely got to Europe at war's end, so it had a full load of ammunition and everything, and some kind of a goofy Navy regulation. When you come back to the States, you can't come back with any ammunition. So to get rid of the ammunition, they were shooting cannons and everything day and night trying to get rid of the ammunition, which to me I thought was just so stupid, because the minute they got to the States, they had to reload the ammunition and go to the Pacific. So what a waste.
So when did you get your staff sergeant?
Not until,
Because that was delayed, wasn't it?
3 days before my discharge.
Okay.
There's another thing. When I went to get the discharge, I wanted to re-enlist. They looked at me and they said, "You don't weigh enough."
Okay, he lost 80 pounds. He went in at 180 when this started, came out at 100 pounds.
Well, no, it was less than 100. I found out later it was 93.
Wow.
Anyway, so they gave me a discharge, honorable discharge for the convenience of the government.
That's always a good phrase. So Les was a POW for 1 year and 10 days.
Right.
If I can get this computer working.
Anybody got any questions?
Les,
That's what I was going to go to next. Don?
I got ahead of you.
Les, how did your feet get through that long march in the winter? Did you have frostbite?
Don's question was how did his feet, right? How did his feet get through that march? And that, it was like 20, 30 below, I think.
I don't know, because later on it said that was one of the coldest winters on record. I have no idea what temperature it was, of course, because we never got the inside of a building, so I never got to see a thermometer or anything like that. But getting back to your question again, we each had a blanket. We found out a blanket, if you spread it on the ground, if you sleep right next to each other, it'll cover, just barely cover 5 people. So we used to put 3 blankets on the ground and cover with 2. And during the night, naturally the outside people would be more subject to the cold. So during the night we would shuffle back and forth.
So this is what the ball turret looked like. And
Could you move the?
there's another picture of Les with after the war.
After the war, right?
Yeah. Les became a member of the Caterpillar Club. You want to talk about that?
Well, the Caterpillar Club, for people whose lives had been saved because they were saved by a parachute. And there's two different kind of pins. There's a red-eyed pin and a green-eyed pin. The green-eyed is if your plane was not on fire. Red-eyed if your plane was on fire.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question. From the time that you were in Solid Blue 4, one of our former members, Earl Joswick, was also there at that time. He talked about that quite a bit, and your stories are just almost the same.
They were probably together on the
Yeah,
on the
on the
march.
march.
We no doubt were.
Were you part of the POW group? Because Earl was part of that group, so he, through the years, through the decades, he, went.
Do you remember the name of the book that Les is in? I was trying to recall the title the other day.
Is that where they had biographies of?
Yeah, yes.
I'll have to think about that, yeah.
I think it's Shot from the Sky. Is that it?
No, it was something else.
Something else.
Was
But
it the
anyway,
Tom
we
Saylor?
were,
It's the Tom Saylor book.
Yeah.
yes,
Remembering the good work.
and I can't think of the title
I
now.
pulled out my copy and I forgot to bring it today.
But Earl talked about that, and he talked about the death march, he talked about the blankets. He was saying that they had these blankets, and one morning they woke up and the blanket just disintegrated.
Well, not disintegrated, but a couple times there was a sleet storm, and sleeping under the sleet storm, the blanket froze to the ground. And we had to actually cut it away from the ground trying to save the blankets.
Have you been back to Taichung?
I have not, I would like to go there.
I went because Earl talked about it all the time, and he wanted to go back. Sadly, he passed away in 2010.
Didn't he announce that to you at lunch one day? We're gonna go to,
Yeah, we were going to go. Earl and I were going to go because we went over to England a couple times.
and you asked, is that a long drive? I think.
It was all through Germany, and now it's, but this is the memorial. that they-
I know they've got a wonderful memorial there for us.
Memorial. So when I went there, I was really shocked because it was around All Saints Day. And I finally found it, and it's out in the middle of nowhere, of course. And when I got there, there were candles, eternity candles there, all kinds of flowers. But it's in Poland now.
The Poland, Polish went all out
Yes,
for
right.
dedication to it.
And
For
the
what?
Polish still do that.
Right.
Constantly. They're keeping vigil candles there all the time and flowers. It was just absolutely beautiful. Tribute.
Are you watching
This-
Masters
this
of
is
the
your-
Air?
This is your crew, right? That's your crew?
That's my crew, except one of the guys is missing.
And that's Les right there.
Could
The
you move the,
good-looking one.
could you move the flag over one?
One thing any of you can do is just go to Google and type in my name. You could either use Les or Lester. Believe it or not, you'll get a different set of stories, but that's one thing you can do. And then the other thing I was going to mention, on the day we were shot down, there was just a small contingent of about 20 airplanes that had been sent to lure the Luftwaffe away from the main targets. But anyway, out of the 20 airplanes, 4 planes were shot down. So in other words, there was 40 crewmen. Out of the 40 crewmen, 31 were killed, 9 of us survived.
And that's your plane, right?
That is actually, I found that on the web. That is actually a painting of our plane because there weren't any cameras were allowed. And I was searching for it on the web, and one day I got an envelope in the mail, and somebody said, "You got lucky," and had that painting in there. He didn't even put his name down or anything, so I could thank him. And I have no idea where he got it, but it must have been completed by the crew chief just after we were shot down.
Now, after the war,
From the capture.
after the war, you found the airplane, right?
I found what was left of it, yeah.
What left of it, yeah. And there's some pieces up here of that. And
That's one of the
this
control
is,
handles from my ball turret. This is the ID plate from the airplane. This is some of the ammunition that, from our machine guns. And this little thing here, we had been flying that same airplane for 3 days in a row, and found this is a crash site. It is, looks like a hydraulic line that has been severed. And to get the plane back in the air again real quick, they just took a rubber hose, slipped it across both ends, and put 2 clamps on it to get the plane back in the air again, so we could fly it.
and this picture is,
That is the actual airplane that shot us down.
yeah, and you connected with that
I
pilot, correct?
spent, I always keep on saying, I spent 4.5 years. It was actually a man that I met in Denmark that spent 4.5 days looking for the German pilot, put me in contact with him. We started corresponding back and forth, and he finally invited me to come to Heidelberg to visit him, and it turned out to be a very, very, very nice reunion.
And let's see, what? That's a ball turret
That's
and how you squeezed in there.
correct.
And this Western Union telegram was sent to
To my parents.
to your parents.
There's another thing the Army did. They were real quick to send a telegram saying I was missing in action. They never bothered to tell my parents that I was a prisoner of war. They never told my parents that I was liberated. My parents, I was shot down on February 22nd. My parents didn't find out I was alive until May 30th. And that was not from the War Department, but that was from a girlfriend that I had in England.
Lester, where exactly was your bomb group?
Northampton, near Northampton.
Okay, how far from Cambridge?
Pardon?
How far from Cambridge?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the map. If you're talking about the Masters of the Air, we used to fly with them a lot. And in fact, I got a kick out of it the other night. I was watching it, and they were showing supposedly from their bomb group that had our markings on them.
Oh, really? So did you fly with the square D, which was the 90?
Triangle B.
Yeah, ours is triangle B.
Triangle D,
And-
yeah.
And then,
And I think there's a circle O, or no, C.
Yeah, Earl's was the square B out of 90.
Yeah.
Square B.
Go ahead.
Les, my mum, I'm from England.
Yes.
My mum wants a word with you.
Oh, yes, I'd love to.
I'm gonna joke.
I've always got a soft heart in my heart for people from England.
How realistic are the flight scenes from Masters of the Air, in your opinion?
They do a very good job. There's only 2 things. One of them is chatter, 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 you know, the plane over there, the one coming, that never happened. There's a time you were busy shooting, it was very seldom anybody would say anything because you knew that doggone well where the planes were. And the other thing, it shows them shooting tracer bullets. That is something we never did because if we would have, it would melt gun barrels real quick. In fact, we had one guy in our barracks that burned out 3 different sets of gun barrels just shooting the regular ammunition. And they finally grounded him, and he was so despondent over letting his crew down, he shot himself.
What, you spent time with Herman, right?
Yes,
That shot you
I
down?
spent almost a week with him.
What was that like?
Oh, couldn't have been better. He treated us to the tour of the old Heidelberg castle. He took us on a trip on the Neckar River. Another time, he took us to a real elegant restaurant. And then, believe it or not, he invited us over to his house to see his war rivers and all that. And I've talked to some other Germans, and they say that is absolutely rare that anyone would ever, that any German would bring you over showing you his war relics. So we felt very honored. And I kept in contact with him until he died. Anybody else?
Any more questions?
What's the story on the silverware there?
That was my knife, fork, and spoon when I was a POW. And I was very lucky because those are the utensils that the officers had, I understand. Just a short while after I got to Stalingrad for, they issued real crappy looking knife, fork, and spoon. You might wonder about this little wooden puzzle. That was made by a Russian slave. In our camps, they always had Russians working to repair things and pump out sewage and things like that. You weren't allowed to talk to any of them, but every once in a while I could get one of them off to the side and talk to them. This kid looked real young, and one day I got to talk to him, and he said, "You look way too young to be here." "How old are you?" And he said, "I'm 14. And then he went on to say when he was 12, the Bolsheviks, I don't know who he means, the Bolsheviks came to his village, killed his mother and father right in front of him, and made him join the Soviet army, and he was captured at Leningrad. And that poor kid, I'm sure that they actually worked and starved him to death.
Les, what are you doing on June 6th?
I am invited to go to Normandy.
And you're being flown by American Airlines?
American Airlines. I think there's some other people that contribute as well, but the main one is American Airlines, right? And it's a 9-day, well, for me it'll actually be 10 days. It's a 9-day trip, but I'll end up in Dallas, and on the 10th they'll bring me back home.
So this trip you'll need a passport, but the first one you didn't.
Well, the first one, yeah, now I get what you're talking about, right?
I have a question too. Earl talked about this as well after you were liberated from the death march. And he said the same thing, that you just were on your own. And I just found that so odd.
Yeah.
That after all of that, and, VEA,
Well,
and you were just,
yeah, just like forgotten.
yeah.
I mean, like I said, I was liberated on May 3rd. I didn't get home till July 30th.
So, I mean, for the American Army, Air Force, to not recognize,
It's just like they wrote us off, put it that way.
yeah, I was just shocked. when-
They didn't have any Apple tape.
And in contrast to the English that liberated us, I mean, they gave us the clothes off their back. I mean, they gave us their uniform. They treated us well. I mean, they couldn't have done better. And there were so many of us that we were literally literally even them out of house and home.
I mean, the communication between the Allies, the Brits and the Commonwealth and the Americans,
But-
I mean,
But what really irritated me is, I was up for promotion on February 23rd. And, so I got shot down and I figured, well, yeah, come back. No, it didn't go through because you were detached from your service. I didn't care about the rank, but I sure as heck cared about the dollars.
Yeah, the money.
yeah. But that is just shocking to me
Yeah.
still, that you prisoners were just on the loose. Nobody along the route up to Le Havre, Lucky Strike, said, okay, you know, we're gonna take care of you, we're gonna get you back.
Well, you know, that carried on even after I got home from the severe dysentery. It didn't happen too often, but every once in a while I would just go into convulsion. And this kept on for, a good number of years. And I was going to the VA and complaining about it. No, that can't have anything to do with when you were their prisoner. That must be stress on the job. They wouldn't do anything. And then one time I was just in terrible misery, and I went to the VA, and I can still remember this doctor. He said, he told me, he said, we're going to find out what's wrong. And he sent me to have my stomach x-rayed. And I can still remember the technician. She said, we took a picture of where your stomach should have been, but it isn't there. What had happened with the convulsions, it forced my stomach up above my diaphragm, and so the food couldn't get either way, and it was slowly killing me. And I do give the VA credit. They operated on me, and it bothers me a little bit once in a while, but they put my stomach in a mesh bag and tied it down to my backbone. And that did it.
I know it's remarkable that you were actually able to get back to the crash site in Denmark and recover the artifacts that you got here. And you were mentioning that school children used to be kind of picking over that site before that. Was there any kind of archaeological excavation of that? Because we had a presentation here several months back about that P-47 went in and they did a whole recovery of that site. Has anything formally been done on your site?
No, none. And I read about that P-47 too. That must have been some private outfit or something, because look at how many other ones crashed and they never bothered to look at them.
But you've actually got the ID plate for
Well,
your plane.
but that was on our own. In fact, I've got video showing when we dug that up, so it wasn't planted there or anything like that. We got seeing us scraping the mud off of it.
Any other questions? You want to add anything else, Les?
No.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know you are.
It's the 8th Air Force.
Hey, therefore,
Before we go, I want Jim Rasmussen to tell his story about relieving himself.
No, you don't want to.
I'm gonna tell it.
You heard that story.
Jim had to relieve himself, and the story was the volunteer gunner had to turn his guns back.
Yeah, Don, you're in the photo.
Alert the guy, so he beat on the volunteer gunner.
Well, now, okay, the story's done.
I had it happen to me too.
hey, Air Force.
Look at that.
Bloody 100.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
With heroes, with heroes.
Yes. Quite an afternoon.
What is this again?
The intake valve from one of the engines.
Okay, yeah,
that-
it looked familiar, but it was super.
Before I went to Denmark, they had sent that to me as a souvenir.
Really?
So now where
That is the control panel from my turret. Right there's where I would have shot the guns. And
Really?
it's
Okay.
badly bent, and this used to all be covered in rubber.
And that's the button you pressed?
Yep.
Okay.
Look out, you'll shoot the machine guns.
Okay.
So you were actually in the prison camp and it reached you.
Yeah, this is from a prison camp, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. So she's just filling you in on news and
Take care, guys. Yeah, next time. Remember Friday.
What is this?
See everybody
That's
on
the
Friday.
identification plate from that airplane that we
Wow.
got shot down in.
Okay. And did somebody give that to you later, or?
We recovered it when
found
we
it.
were there.
Wow. Okay.
They only show 9 on the crew there, is that?
Yeah, one guy played hooky, and he caught hell for doing it.
Oh, okay, so you did have 10 on the crew, but
We had 10 on the crew, right?
Never gotten, I was just wondering about
No,
that.
that was later on in the war that they.
Yeah, well, there was only 9 on my crew, yeah.
No, it was the left waist gunner.
Right, that's what we were.
That isn't there.
One waist gunner, yeah. That's what.
you two met before at, do you remember the picnic at Dupnick's?
We went, this was about four years ago or more. We had a picnic out at a guy's house, and,
Patton.
well, I think,
Patton was there.
yeah, he was there, I guess, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I remember that. This is from the hub of a propeller. That's where the propellers change pitch.
Oh, okay. So you feather your prop with that.
Dane had sent these two things to me before I got to Denmark.
I don't recall when you were telling the story that you got the Purple Heart, that you had gotten wounded.
I've actually got 2 of them.
Oh, was that when you bailed out and whatnot?
No, it's from getting beaten up.
Oh, is that what that's for? Yeah, oh, okay. I see.
Anyway,
Well, nice meeting you.
God bless you.
Like the other gentleman said, Les, you're a tough SOB.
The last part I can believe.
So how did you happen to know German?
My great-great-grandfather came from, well, my great-great-grandparents came from Germany.
Oh, okay.
And my grandparents spoke mostly German. But the trouble was, they died when I was 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah,
So I didn't get to know the German real well.
yeah.
But get this, about 10 years ago, a woman from Germany wrote to me and she says, I think we may be related.
Oh, is that
She
right?
said, my maiden name was Schrenk, and she mentioned the town that she came from.
Oh, yeah.
That was exactly the same town that my great-grandfather came from.
Oh, okay, sure.
So she'd been over to visit me quite a number of times
Oh,
now.
excellent. Ah, nice. Excellent, yeah.
Oh,
Les, what is this thing?
that was found at the crash site. So there was a lot of battle damage. This is a hydraulic line. To get the plane back in the air real quick, they put a rubber hose across, put 2 hose clamps, and we're back in the air.
Wow, improvised solution there.
Well, how did you happen to get back to the crash site?
Walked.
No, I mean, this was before the Germans, this was after the war then, or?
After the war, yeah. That was in 2008.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. Years later, yeah, okay.
Wonderful.
Well, it's an amazing story. Thanks so much.
Well, you're very welcome, sir.